Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Our guest today is my good friend Gary Wagner, the editor of goldforecast.com. Glad to have you back, Gary.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's always a huge pleasure you come and talk about the markets, everything that's happening with silver and gold and what we see in the future. And the huge question everyone wants been asking in Wall Street Silver is where you see silver going specifically. Then we can move on to gold. But where do you see silver going from now, let's say, to the end of 2023? What's your forecast?
Well, as you know, we've seen silver have a dramatic decline. Absolutely no doubt about that. Um, it's basically the result of the Federal Reserve. They've done so many rate hikes over this year that the bottom line is it's taken gold and silver substantially lower. If you look at gold down from the highs of about 2085. The good news is on a technical basis, and that's the key because we've got a news driven market. So at any point, anything can happen. But I think we're close to a bottom. I think I was a lot more bearish last time we spoke. And I
Yeah.
feel even though we've seen a decline, for example, recently, I don't know when this will be aired, but we're filming this the day they released the Fed minutes.
Hmm.
There are such mixed messages amongst the Federal Reserve. The one takeaway is they'll probably do one more interest rate hike, and that's what's been holding both metals back. It's when they start reducing rates that we can see that real spark and see gold fly up again and challenge the recent highs, as well as silver, which is about $26. So right
Hmm.
now, I believe we could have a little more, bit more downside to about $22, high 21s.
Absolutely. And you did send me some charts here. I have the silver future charts up right now. And
Hmm.
you're talking about silver and where you're seeing it from going from now until the end of 2023. Do you see any uncertainties when the Fed actually does pause interest rates? And let's say they pause and they start to reduce. Is there any reason why silver and gold wouldn't take off, or do you see a guarantee takeoff once the Fed
There's
pauses?
When it comes to the Federal Reserve, there are no guarantees, except that with 18 members voting, or I believe it's 9 members voting, 18 full members. The one thing we saw today was mixed messages. Some say, we need to continue this pause right now.
Right.
That's important. Any more rate hikes might be detrimental. Some of the more hawkish members are saying, no, 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 we're not done yet. So are we in for surprises? Most likely. But the chart that you just had put up on screen
Right.
definitively showed that we're at a potential area of support on a technical basis. But the fundamentals behind what the Fed is doing, even on a day like today, push both of the metals lower. So both gold and silver lower.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that at some point soon, we'll see whether it's a reversal or just like a dead cat bounce, so to speak. We will see a bottom hit in both gold and silver and a move back up.
And as the Fed pauses, do you think there'll be a contagion from like a banking crisis? Will it spread to real estate? How bad of an outcome will that be, and how will that affect precious metals?
Well, real estate's what you really want to look at because of the price of mortgages, obviously.
Right.
Um, Listen, in the United States, I'm assuming Canada, very, very similar effect is happening, which is a robust economy. They've ratcheted rates up from zero to about 5.5.
Yeah.
It's affected everything across the board. And they have had an effect on inflation. But as one other analyst pointed out, he doesn't believe that it's a raising of rates that actually did it. It's mostly the supply chain disruptions that occurred immediately following the recession, the pandemic, things like that,
Right.
that really took inflation and started to bring it down because they're able to get products to the store. The economy is robust. The job market is robust. The key is that what traders are looking for more than anything else is when the Fed starts to reduce interest rates. If they announce a pause, that's a positive factor, and that will kind of stop the carnage. Let's put it that way, because we've seen silver come under tremendous pressure, moving
Hmm.
dramatically lower. Same with gold. It's when they announce that, okay, we'll begin rate cuts first quarter next year, so to speak, that's when you're going to see a real surge back to the upside. Of course, any flare up geopolitically, whether it's China and the US, whether it's Russia and the conflict in Ukraine, those are hot spots. But I don't want to look at that because I'm praying that that all kind of works out and we live in a peaceful world, but we can all pray that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really going to be when the Fed starts to cut rates that you'll see a reversal and a hard kick up. Right now, we want to stop the damage that's been done, and that will happen as long as the Fed only raises rates one more time this year, quarter basis point, because that pretty much has been factored into current pricing.
hmm You see everything that's happening with the BRICS nations that you brought up, and a lot of people are saying that the US have basically weaponized the US dollar against countries, and maybe some countries are looking like, oh, what if they do that to our country in the future? So that's why BRICS nations, as they're working so hard to move away from the US dollar. Do you think there will come a time where the US dollar will just overnight be worthless and against the BRICS nations, or no, that's just far fetched?
You know what? I've given you both sides of the coin. And I don't know honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that the dollar, as long as the U.S. remains the number one economic powerhouse, and I'm not talking about spending
right.
as much as our corporations and our technology outweigh anything to our nearest competitors. The Eurozone has a lot more weakness than we do. China is showing, I mean, they actually cut rates in China,
hmm
which tells you categorically that they're having some issues. And when when they're cutting rates, that's telling you they're trying to stop it from a further decline. So as long as the US economically and the corporations, because it's not politics anymore,
Right.
it's the economy that drives the dollar up or down. And look at the dollar bottomed at 99, it's up around 103, and it originally began the fall about a year ago from 114. And the thing that I always want to point out is when we talk about dollar strength or weakness, we are comparing the dollar to a basket of currencies, 60% being the euro.
hmm
And so, do I think that the euro will overtake the dollar? And I have to say that's going to be difficult at best. And so we're looking at a dollar chart now, and you can see
Yes.
that it hit what the middle of June, it hit that bottom, and it's just been pretty much straight up. Today, as we record this, the dollar closed above the 200-day moving average. Now, I'm a market technician.
hmm
I became a technician because as I listened to the news, all I did was get confused. It's absolute truth. One guy says one thing, you hear
Yeah.
this, you hear that, and these are smart, learned men with different opinions. There's no guarantees.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I felt that math and numbers don't lie. And that's why I became a technical market technician. I follow the fundamentals because that's what moves the market. It's not math that moves it. But if you look at how the dollar's moved almost at a very, very steep tack upward,
hmm
there's strength there. And realize that strength is really comparing it mostly to the euro. 60% of the index weighted on the euro. And
Right.
so it's telling me that there is definitely some suffering going on in the eurozone compared to the US. The US is exceptionally robust in terms of the economics and consumer spending, and that is a bewilderment with all the things they tell us. I know that it costs twice as much for a carton of milk.
Yeah.
Inflation is still out of control, regardless of what the Fed tells us that they've really gotten a handle on it. Um, and they're happy when it's only gone up like 0.2%. Well, what about the days when inflation didn't go up? I
Right.
mean, how are we still happy with rising inflation? And even though it's come down to a level, I haven't seen gas prices decrease that much, although we have seen that in oil. But food prices have remained persistently hot. I haven't seen any commercial food producer lower their prices.
Yeah, I
So
agree with you. And sorry to cut you off, Gary. Just wanted to add on to that. Everywhere I go to is the government and the newspapers or everything in the news is saying lower inflation, and obviously the numbers can be manipulated if they depending on how they calculate it from the 70s and 80s compared to now. But everywhere you go, like gas is higher and groceries are, so it's like, how's inflation going down? It's just crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're 100, it's an excellent point. The bottom line is, I think for the middle class, both in Canada as well as Northern America, and all the way out here in Hawaii, which is in the middle of nowhere, but part of the United States, and that we speak English and we spend US dollars,
Yeah.
it's really a unique area. But I haven't seen any prices decline in terms of food costs or consumer goods.
Hmm.
Services, they're paying out a little bit more. That's what the Fed is worried about, but good for that. I mean, that's positive to me. That's the inflation I'll suck up to.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, higher food prices are difficult. The fact that they're paying people almost fair wages,
Hmm.
I'll go with that. I'm okay with that. The bottom line is that the Fed is for the first time, these minutes revealed that there's not a unification in Federal Reserve members.
Right.
The Hawks still say we need to do more and keep raising rates. The Doves are saying, hey, enough is enough. Let's stop this already. And there's mixed messages that came out of the minutes,
Hmm.
which is unusual because at least on the surface, even though it's behind closed door and these are the minutes, they usually have a unified face. And I did not see that in the minutes today.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important now, like just looking at everything that's happening in society and all the uncertainties with inflation and even housing prices on the rise. How important is it to you to own physical silver and gold, Gary? Are you currently stacking?
You know what? Yes, to answer you shortly, I've been for the last about year and a half to 2 years, I've been doing silver because I felt it was more undervalued, but
Right,
I've been wrong. It's
right.
been gold that's been holding better, holding much better to prices in terms of percentage drawdown. Silver had a much steeper fall and deeper decline, but it's kind of like the candle that burns at both ends. It goes up a lot more and it comes
Yeah,
down
yeah.
even harder.
Yeah, yeah. Silver is
So
more volatile, of course, than gold.
my feeling is always stack, always put a given percentage, and that's the key regardless of what's going on. If you have extra dollars and you're lucky enough to not live week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, you want to invest in something. I've kind of shied away from the stock market in that
Right.
I thought the tech sector had its big moves, and if you look at the charts, there's individual stocks that are performing well, but as a whole it could go either way. I
Yeah.
think over time it's always going to go up. Real estate, I'm just glad I have a property. My primary property has a really, really low mortgage rate because I did refinance and I think I'm locked in at 2.7%.
Wow. For
So
30 years or how many
yes,
years?
yeah,
Oh,
30
wow.
year.
That's awesome. It's 8% now for 30 years.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Originally, when I bought the property, I had my mortgage at 6%. But when the Fed dropped to zero and kept near 0 to 0.25%, logic dictates that you're not going to see rates get better because typically that sets a precedent for what the banks do. And they're always going to get 3 points over Fed funds rate, which I'll
Right.
call prime. They're not going to loan you money for free. So I figured that was the best it's going to get because you're not going to see them go negative.
No, no.
So it's difficult right now in Hawaii. It's especially a challenge for people to sell properties because people who are applying or looking to get a new property are being dictated by these high mortgage rates, and those dictate how much of a monthly payment they can afford.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
that makes it more difficult to sell. Plus, those fortunate enough or lucky enough, I put myself in the lucky category to get a mortgage that low. I'm not moving anywhere. There's no reason to. I
Yeah.
can't. I can't repeat that. And yet, I'd like to get a bigger. Well, we always want to get a bigger piece of property. So take your extra, put a certain percentage towards gold or silver. Either one is a good investment to me. But remember, it's a percentage, and
Yeah.
you can't go wrong, rain or shine. Always putting a portion of any investment capital you have into the precious metals. I've always been a hard money advocate, and that
Hmm.
hasn't changed.
Absolutely. And Gary, it's such a huge pleasure having you come down to Wall Street Silver, especially going through those charts about the US and the silver. And I'd love to have you back on soon just to update you on or update everyone on the market and see what happens with Jerome Powell. But it's such a huge pleasure having you on, Gary.
You guys are one of my favorite audiences because you're stackers.
Yeah, we're
And I can relate to that in a very small way compared to what I
thank you.
see in terms of the pictures that come up through your site. You guys are real stackers, so my hat's off to you because you're doing something a lot better than I've done.
No, no, we're all in this together. Thank you so much, Gary. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
That's a valid point.
Hey, talk to you soon.